What if I told you there's a place near Sedona, Arizona, where you can see 900-year-old handprints, ancient cliff dwellings, and prehistoric graffiti without all the crowds? Welcome to Paleki Heritage Site, where history isn't just told, it's right there in front of you. You know what they say, the early bird gets the worm, and we were determined to not be one of those people to show up late and jog into their tour and pretend they were early. So we, as always, were very early. Early enough that the ranger invited us on the next tour, even though our tour was scheduled later. We were so glad that they let us move on early because it meant that we ended up having a private tour. Just us, the guide at each location we were going to, and of course, 1,000 years of history. Before we made our way to our hike, we met our first guide, who we didn't know at the time was going to be our second guide of the day. He told us about some of the basic history of the Paleki Park. The Sinagua people were between 1100 and 1300 AD. But he also told us the interesting story of Charles Willard. Charles Willard was the man who settled here and lived actually in a cliff dwelling himself between 1923 and 1925. And he used the landscape to his advantage over the years. So besides seeing history from the Sinagua people, we were going to see some of the history from Charles Willard. The gentleman quickly sent us on our way to our first stop, which was of course the cliff dwellings. The trail was easy, but as we dropped into the canyon we noticed something. The air changed. The temperature dropped. The desert heat gave way to cool canyon breezes. It felt like stepping into another world. And then we reached the ruins. They seamlessly appear out of nowhere through the trees. And what's great is you can walk right up to the walls and see the handprints of those who built them centuries ago. You can even spot the fingerprints still pressed into the ancient mortar. It's like the builders left their mark on purpose. A silent message from the past. The ranger who was up here also told us some history about the Sinagua people. Sinagua literally means without water, which is kind of a nod to the harsh desert conditions they adapted to. However, this was not the name of the people. We honestly don't know what their true name was. But yet, even in these harsh desert conditions, they built multi-story homes beneath red rock overhangs, perfectly placed to shield from the blistering sun and fierce monsoon storms which hit in late summer. We stayed and admired all of these buildings as long as we were allowed to before we had to move on to the next section of our tour. We were greeted by the gentleman that we had met earlier, and he said he would be our petroglyph and pictograph guide for the rest of the tour. Most people hear about Palatki because of the ruins, but this isn't just a ruin site. This site is also home to one of the largest known rock art collections in the area, some dating back over 5,000 years. Our first stop on our tour was the Grotto. This area features layers of pictographs covering canyon walls, animal shapes, spirals, abstract patterns, and most of these ancient symbols that you see today are still a mystery since we can only speculate to what they mean. Our favorite ones were actually some of the paintings that were stained black from centuries of soot, giving them almost a ghostly appearance. We have never seen that before in any of the other pictographs that we have ever seen, so we were truly impressed since we've never seen it before. We asked different interesting questions along the way, and our tour guide asked us if we would like the extended tour. Of course, we couldn't say no to that. As we walked along the way, he would point out different petroglyphs and different pictographs that aren't normally pointed out on the not extended tour. But our next stop was the bear alcove, which was kind of a favorite. It has named because it has 3 bear figures painted near the roof line: Papa Bear, Mama Bear, and of course, Baby Bear. He also pointed out something I have never seen before, and it was a baby's footprint that had been carved into the wall. Now, do we question, was this a lost baby that they were trying to make a memory of, or was this a future leader? What do you think down below? Write in the comments. After listening to some of his stories about what he thought some of these things were, we continued on to our last destination, which was the Agave roasting pit. Now this part is truly fascinating, and I've never heard of this ever being done before at any of the other sites we visited. The agave roasting pit gets its name because this is where they roasted agave plants. Now for those who are not familiar with an agave plant, it kind of looks like a fat yucca, and it's commonly found in the southwestern desert region. Today we know it more for what it can do for like agave syrup and things like that, so as you can imagine, since the plant is sweet, the native people must have used it in some capacity. Well, this is what they found out here. They would take these agave plants, put them on the coals, and cover them up and roast them for days. Basically slow cooking the agave, and they would do it until it was caramelized. They'd chew the sweet fibers, and it was kind of basically like their prehistoric chewing gum. Forget the juicy fruit and sign me up for some agave. Who knew these people were making natural candy for centuries? Besides that, we looked at some of the sitting rocks that were there where people would historically sit. You could definitely tell that these rocks were polished from years of someone putting their butt there. Our guide also showed us what they believe is the portal rock. They believe that someone would sit here and was sick, and then when they moved over to the other side of the rock, they were cured. Was that really what was happening? We don't know, but it's a good theory. Sadly, before we knew it, the tour was coming to an end. If we could have pitched a tent here and stayed forever, we probably would have. Between the peaceful canyon, the hands-on history, and the chance to see ancient art close up, Palatki ranks as one of the most immersive heritage sites that we've been to besides Chaco Canyon. If you've enjoyed this journey back in time, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more off-the-beaten-path adventures, and drop a comment. What was the most surprising thing you learned in this video? We'd love to hear your thoughts.